In a congressional hearing viewed by over 14 million Americans, Congresswoman Elizabeth Harper confronts billionaire Charles Kane about his covert network manipulating U.S. laws. When Elizabeth unveils undeniable proof, the chamber explodes in shock. Kane sits speechless, and within hours, federal authorities begin closing in. What unfolds when an untouchable titan faces accountability, and the man who believed he controlled Congress becomes the hunted? Stay tuned. This tale demands your full attention. We're on a mission to hit 1,000 subscribers and amplify the fight for justice. Elizabeth Harper's battle against a billionaire's empire needs your voice. Subscribe now, join the movement, and let's make truth unstoppable together. With quiet intensity, the doors swung open, as if signaling an inevitable clash. Elizabeth Harper strode into the chamber, her eyes blazing with purpose, not pomp. Her measured steps echoed sharply, heels striking marble like a ticking clock, heralding change. The room buzzed with tension. Cameras locked on, aides motionless, operatives sizing her up like a danger cloaked in elegance. She offered no smile, no nod of acknowledgement. Settling at the table, she embodied a woman aware the system wasn't built for her, yet determined to dismantle its flaws. The chairman's gavel fell with authority. We convene this session to probe claims of illicit political sway and dark money linked to Kane Enterprises, he declared. Elizabeth flipped open her folder, her silence speaking volumes. Behind her, the air crackled with anticipation. Across the table, a phalanx of suits murmured, their composure a fragile mask. This wasn't routine oversight, it was a battle. Then he appeared. The doors parted once more, and Charles Kane swept in, a tempest in a bespoke suit. Surrounded by lawyers and cloaked in silence, he ignored Elizabeth's presence. His cane rapped the floor, each tap a silent assertion of dominance. He lowered himself into his seat, exuding ownership of the space. A clerk approached, holding the oath card. "Sir, please raise your right hand," she instructed. He fixed her with a stare, as if she'd disrupted a private summit. With a faint smirk and a voice smooth yet laced with scorn, he said, "I bow to the Constitution, not this theatrical display." The room inhaled sharply. Cameras swiveled to capture the moment. A voice from the back whispered, "Did he really say that?" Elizabeth remained still, her posture rigid, eyes locked on him. In that wordless pause, their conflict ignited. Kane's bold refusal had stunned the chamber. Yet Elizabeth didn't counter his jab. She had no need to. Her response would unfold not through words, but via the screen at her back. With unnerving calm, she lifted the remote, her poise unsettling the onlookers. No theatrics, no flair. Just precision guided her hand. The screen sparked to life, bathing the room in a ghostly glow. Complexity unfolded, lines, loops, and nodes, sprawling like a contagion under scrutiny. Silence gripped the audience. The display was cold, calculated, irrefutable, a web so intricate it resembled a global espionage network, not a domestic political scheme. "This," Elizabeth announced, rising with unwavering clarity, "is no mere theory. It's a framework." Circles flared on the screen, each labeled with a nonprofit, think tank, legal fund, or voter group. They shared no branding, no personnel, yet one thread bound them all. A financial artery pulsed from Kane Enterprises, orchestrating moves across a national stage. The chamber leaned closer. 72 entwined entities, she stated, her laser pinpointing the dense core. Each pursues a unique agenda, denying climate science, suppressing taxes, spreading anti-reform narratives. But all draw from one well. Lines wove a map akin to a crime syndicate's blueprint. Some veered toward election PACs, others dissolved into shell companies nestled in Delaware or Wyoming, havens of corporate opacity. Elizabeth magnified a single node, This entity channeled $18 million into state races to thwart climate laws, funneled through a nonprofit tied to a Delaware P.O. box. She faced the panel. A mailbox, not a headquarters, not a staff, just a slot. Yet it wielded power to rewrite legislation. Murmurs of disbelief swept the gallery. Reporters scribbled furiously. An intern at the rear craned forward, stunned. Elizabeth pressed on. "This isn't influence," she declared, lowering her pointer. "It's laundering policy, crafted to sidestep voters entirely." The screen shifted, revealing fresh data. $14 million to derail Midwest tax reforms. $22 million to block prison reform across 4 states. An Ohio PAC pocketed $9 million in 6 months, disclosed nothing, then vanished before midterms. "These aren't random acts," Elizabeth said, her voice sharpening. "They're deliberate barriers, phantoms cloaked in the guise of public will." A heavy quiet descended, not uneasy, but profound, as if the room's gravity had realigned. She pivoted deliberately to the committee, then to Kane. "Who engineered this system? Who pulls the strings, signs the checks, erases the tracks?" Her hand rose, pointing with unwavering truth. "That man, right there." Every gaze turned. Kane didn't flinch, his chin tilted upward, but his grip on his cane tightened subtly, enough for Elizabeth to notice. And that sufficed. The screen's figures lingered, but the silence they cast was palpable. It wasn't mere hush, it was bated breath. Elizabeth had exposed the network with surgical precision, its roots laid bare. The audience didn't just listen, they absorbed, staggered. For a fleeting moment, even Kane sat motionless, gauging the room's pulse. But men of his ilk don't dwell in silence. He didn't shout or disrupt. Instead, he raised a hand, tapping 2 fingers rhythmically on the mahogany desk. Tap, tap, tap. A cadence meant to seize control subtly. He leaned forward, elbows light, as if presiding over a routine boardroom. A practiced smirk curved his lips, honed by years of effortless victories. When he spoke, his voice was steady, slicing without menace. "That's what democracy looks like," he said, the word democracy hanging hollowly. "Try funding it yourself sometime." It wasn't just evasion. It was a barb, delivered with the finesse of someone skilled at belittling without detection. The remark didn't aim to debate policy, but to diminish her, reminding all, especially Elizabeth, that his wealth made him invincible. In his democracy, power was bought, not earned. Heads swiveled. A senator coughed to hide unease. A journalist's pen stalled mid-stroke. But Elizabeth didn't waver, not even slightly. The moment wasn't about countering his tone, it was about dismantling his foundation. As his tapping faded, her silence spoke louder than any quip. She wasn't defending, she was arming her next move. Kane's smug words lingered, polished and cutting, like a gilded verdict. Yet Elizabeth didn't react. She didn't debate. She advanced to the next slide. This time, no charts appeared, just names. 3 email threads materialized behind her, sterile, professional, each heavy with implication in plain text. She inhaled, then stepped aside, letting the room absorb them. No narration, no drama, just quiet and words, time-stamped evidence of money's reach into law. The names weren't obscure aides, they were prominent U.S. senators, exposed in that moment. Elizabeth spoke with deliberate calm, letting the truth carry its own weight. "Let it be noted," she said steadily, "these aren't opinions, they're directives." Her laser highlighted the first email, sent 3 weeks before an emissions bill's debut. Kane's top counsel had proposed changes directly to a senator's aide, not suggestions, but revisions. Swap mandatory carbon rules for voluntary incentives, it instructed. Another email subject was stark: Proposed language, energy relief clause. Below, a pre-drafted paragraph awaited insertion into federal law. Elizabeth paused, then read the final line aloud. Replace enforcement with voluntary compliance. Draft below. The room froze. She faced the committee, locking eyes with each member. When a citizen pens the law and officials merely enact it, is that democracy or something else? Her words didn't crash. They settled, like embers after a blaze. No one stirred. Then Kane shifted slightly, not rattled, but restless. He adjusted his cufflinks with intent, not habit, and leaned into the mic, his voice smooth as a rehearsed script. "Senator Harper," he said, amusement tinged with dismissal. "If talking politics is a crime, you'd need to jail every lobbyist in D.C." The line was crafted to spark laughter, and it did. A faint chuckle from conservative seats. But Elizabeth stood resolute, unblinking. She stepped closer to the table, not with aggression, but with quiet command. Her voice was soft, yet razor-sharp. Not every lobbyist picks the pen and chooses the ink. No one laughed then, for she had named the unspoken. Influence versus control. And Kane had built his empire on blurring that line. Her words' echo lingered as another binder slid forward, heavy with implication. What followed wasn't guesswork, it was proof. A leather-bound folder reached the clerk, who set it before the chairman like evidence in a courtroom. It was exactly that. Elizabeth stood firm, shoulders squared, voice controlled, like a lawyer delivering a final plea. The screen displayed a bold title: Freedom Network, Communication Strategy, Confidential. No speculation, just stark text revealing intent. She stepped forward steadily and read aloud. Deploy media to sow doubt. Confusion is the objective. The words didn't detonate. They sank, toxic and undeniable. The gallery stilled. Aides paused mid-note. A reporter's pen slipped. The room wasn't grasping a surprise. It was confirming a truth. Public trust had eroded for years, and now they knew who funded the erosion. Elizabeth let the words breathe, then faced the committee. "This wasn't engagement," she said, "nor persuasion. It was calculated sabotage." Her voice stayed level. The document roared for her. When truth is optional, control is certain. That was their aim, not to win minds or votes, but to make belief itself obsolete. The ensuing silence wasn't shock, it was entrapment. Suits shifted, senators averted eyes, not in guilt, but recognition of a familiar playbook. They'd seen it in misleading op-eds, in headlines that muddied facts to stall progress. Kane didn't falter. He didn't hesitate. Leaning back with the ease of a man who'd authored countless such plans, he adjusted his sleeve, then smiled, calculated, precise. His voice dripped with cool disdain. Asking questions isn't deceit, it's teaching the slow to think. It was neither denial nor remorse, just a claim to power, to speak without consequence, and that was his boldest statement yet. Kane's arrogant words hung, unshaken, when a sudden shift broke the room's rhythm. Not Elizabeth, not Kane, but an ally of his wavered. A chair scraped softly, a mundane sound piercing the quiet. A Republican committee member rose, hands trembling faintly, betraying unspoken words. All eyes fixed on him. No novice, he was seasoned, trusted, until now. His voice quavered, then steadied, each word heavier. "I must speak," he said, scanning the room like a drowning man seeking air. "In 2020, I took funds from Kane's network, and they explicitly asked me to bury this probe before it reached us." Gasps erupted, raw and unfeigned. Staffers, reporters, even Elizabeth's aides exchanged stunned glances. The congressman pressed on, standing firm. "I told myself it was politics, harmless." He glanced at Elizabeth. But seeing this, I know it was bought silence. His admission reshaped the room's balance. Kane had ruled the atmosphere with minimal words, his presence a taut wire. But a loyalist's betrayal snapped that illusion, and Kane sensed it. His hands betrayed him first, fingers curling slowly, as if crushing an unseen threat. The silence around him turned hostile, no longer reverent. His eyes lost their calm, sharpening to a razor's edge. Leaning to the mic, he spoke, a stone wall cracking to reveal fire. "Cowardice in office spreads like disease. I've seen interns with more backbone." The words sliced, elegant yet vicious, meant to shame and isolate. They signaled that loyalty to him was non-negotiable currency, and someone had defaulted. Heads turned. A Republican scribbled nothing, staring at blank notes. But Elizabeth stood unmoved, locking eyes with Kane, seeing the flaws in his monument. Her voice was calm, deliberate, unyielding. "And I've seen puppets with fewer strings." The room didn't gasp. It understood. The hearing had become a reckoning of ownership and defiance. A fracture had split the chamber, but Elizabeth wasn't done. Her next witness wasn't a politician or analyst, but a rare figure, a victim with nothing to lose. Aides opened a side door, and Sarah Mitchell stepped in, her presence jarring because it was authentic. No suit, no insignia, just a worn blue shirt, weathered skin, and quiet resilience. Her boots were silent as she approached the witness table, hands clasped, holding back more than nerves. Elizabeth stood beside her, not as a lawmaker, but a conduit. The room hushed as Sarah adjusted the mic, her voice quivering, raw. "I'm Sarah Mitchell, from Madison County, Iowa. I've lived there forever. My land came from my father, and his before him. We raised cattle, grew corn, buried kin there." Her voice broke, but she continued. 2 years ago, they said a pipeline was coming. Not asked, just told. When I resisted, a lawyer showed up with a figure on paper. I refused. The screen changed. A satellite image showed her land, scarred by earth movers. Elizabeth clicked, revealing documents. Kane Energy Solutions, LC, atop the page. Sarah spoke as the room watched. "Trucks arrived soon after, then bulldozers. I called every contact they gave. No one responded. I filed complaints, was told it was legal." Her voice fell. "They plowed through our graveyard, uprooted trees older than me." Committee members shifted uneasily. An aide looked away. Sarah's gaze held steady. 3 nights back, another suit came, offering a check if I signed a non-disclosure for everyone's protection. I asked whose protection. He didn't answer. The room stilled. Her story wasn't abstract. It was raw pain, spoken with weary truth. Elizabeth steadied her hand on the table, then faced Kane's side. Her voice cut sharply. "Mr. Kane, care to reply?" Kane leaned forward, unruffled, his tone that of routine business. She was fairly paid. His words dismissed her, as if land and dignity were line items. The line between arrogance and callousness blurred. Elizabeth didn't waver, pulling a document from her folder and raising it. Her voice was firm, edged with steel. "Then why did your lawyer visit her yesterday with a gag order and a threat?" The screen showed a Kane firm's letterhead, offering payment for silence. A clause highlighted. "Recipient shall not disclose interaction details." Gasps rose from the gallery. Reporters typed frantically. A committee member whispered, eyes wide. Kane sat still, his jaw tightening just enough for cameras to catch. He offered no words. Elizabeth didn't need them. The document spoke. Sarah's pain spoke. The silence roared. Kane's lie wasn't in his words. It was in his refusal to answer. And America watched. Hours of testimony and fury hadn't shaken Elizabeth. Kane's team, sensing defeat, didn't chase facts. They sought to discredit the woman wielding truth. Abruptly, the screen flickered, not with evidence, but with a video. Grainy footage played, a clipped town hall from years ago, Elizabeth at a podium among neighbors. Her voice, fierce and clear, echoed, "Capitalism without morals is just tyranny. I'm here to challenge power, not shield it." The speech, about tax evasion and rural job loss, was stripped of context, weaponized as a soundbite. The clip paused, letting the distortion sink in. A Kane lawyer spoke coolly. "This footage reveals Representative Harper's anti-business bias." The attack was clear. Her facts were sidelined. Her character was now the target. A Republican tied to energy PACs seized the moment. "Mr. Chairman, I propose Representative Harper's recusal. Her inflammatory rhetoric undermines her impartiality." The move was calculated, protecting the system her truth endangered. Elizabeth sat quietly, cameras on her. She didn't speak. She knew this game. When facts stood firm, they attacked tone. When evidence held, they questioned intent. Kane leaned in, not to refute, but to brand her. His voice was smooth, almost warm. Radicals get their spotlight in modern America. His faint smile was deliberate. He wasn't defending, but defining her, asserting his narrative's dominance. But he forgot who held the stage. Elizabeth rose, steady, unyielding, forged in fiercer battles. She ignored the accuser, the frozen video, and faced Kane. The silence was her weapon. Her words landed heavy with her journey's weight. "You say radical. I say untainted hands." Her words judged not just Kane, but every viewer who knew the cost of truth over silence. She wasn't defending. She was rewriting the story. In a room expecting her to yield, her unpriced conviction stunned them. For the first time, no one interrupted. The smear failed, and truth reclaimed ground. But the next move didn't shift momentum, it shattered it. Silently, an investigator behind Elizabeth stood, slipping a USB into her hand. No words, just a shared glance of purpose. Elizabeth nodded faintly, facing the panel. "Mr. Chairman, I request to submit new audio evidence from an anonymous federal source, recorded in a Naples, Florida strategy session with Mr. Kane." The chairman, startled, nodded. The clerk inserted the USB. The screen darkened, then lit blue, a timestamp flashing. March 3rd, 2024, 9:17 a.m. Silverware clinked, voices murmured. Then Kane's voice rang clear. "Lobbying's old news," he said lightly. "We don't write laws, we buy their writers." Gasps rolled through the room. An aide's pen fell. A senator muttered, "Jesus." The words weren't vague. They were a confession. Bold because Kane never expected accountability. Kane surged from his seat, composure gone, fury bared. His voice thundered. "That recording's illegal, stolen. You have no right to play it. This breaks wiretap laws, and I'll ensure this committee faces investigation." His unraveling stunned the room. A man once above the fray now cornered. Elizabeth stood calm, letting his rage burn out. Then, with timeless precision, she stepped forward. "So is the democracy you tried to buy." The silence was electric, heavy with reckoning. Kane halted, out of moves. No editorial, no clause, no wealth could erase her proof. Elizabeth didn't press. She didn't need to. The room shifted, phones buzzing, reporters frozen. Outside, news alerts flashed. A billionaire's truth, exposed by a woman armed only with integrity. She didn't smile. She waited. Now, Kane would answer. The chamber hummed with Elizabeth's strike, entering a silence sharper than anger. It wasn't confusion. It was Judgment's Eve, making suits fidget and breaths cautious. Faces changed. Staffers sat rigid. Reporters leaned in. Lawmakers glanced nervously. The truth stood undisputed. The question was action. The chairman, usually curt, paused long, fingers tapping before speaking. Given the evidence's weight, he said slowly, we'll vote now. Shall this hearing's findings, with all exhibits and recordings, go to the Department of Justice for criminal review of Kane Enterprises? He avoided Elizabeth's gaze, focusing forward, balancing law's weight. Envelopes passed, pens scratched, papers folded like judgments. The air grew thick, not loud, but charged. Some lawmakers paused, eyeing Kane from habit or fear. Kane gave no cue, his script gone. He leaned forward, control fading, calculation mixed with cold rage. His voice was too calm. You're not targeting crime. You're attacking power you envy. His words aimed to linger, a final mark before history reshaped power. No outburst, just a reframe, dodging law's reach. Elizabeth rose, not from pride, but necessity. She'd endured hours of evasion and labels, now called fearful for her courage. Her response was precise, truth sharpened. If that power taints the Republic, I'm its cure. Her voice stayed soft, but cut like steel. All felt it, even Kane, his eyes flickering with recognition, not anger. The chairman nodded to the clerk, signaling the vote count. The process was stark, envelopes passing like relics. Numbers tallied, time slowed, then snapped as the chairman spoke. By 10-3, the motion passes. The matter goes to the Department of Justice. No cheers rose. It wasn't that moment. All knew a boundary was crossed, the system turning on its architect. Kane sat rigid, smirks gone. Elizabeth sat quietly, releasing the weight of past unheard truths. This time, truth prevailed. She sought no praise, looking ahead. This was a start. The vote struck like a hammer, yet none stirred. The verdict's weight hung like smoke. All eyes turned to Kane, no longer the watcher, but the watched. Charles Kane stood with precision, a man unaccustomed to defeat. Yet his mask slipped faintly, fury glinting in his eyes. His suit was flawless, but contempt mixed with disbelief. His empire, built on silent deals, was exposed. He gripped his cane for control, not need. Each step to the exit carried the weight of Elizabeth's blow. Aides approached, but he dismissed them with a headshake. His pride lay in never flinching. Now that faltered. At the door, he paused, turning to Elizabeth. His voice was calm, edged with menace. This isn't the end. Empires endure beyond a day. His words carried decades, a warning from a man who thrived on delayed consequences. But Elizabeth didn't stir, her gaze beyond him on the work ahead. She spoke to his legacy, not him. They fall when their core is rotten. The words landed like a quake, needing no applause. Kane's jaw twitched, then he vanished through the doors, met by silence. Cameras tracked him briefly, then returned to Elizabeth. She wasn't finished. She stood slowly, the room smaller without Kane's shadow. Her eyes swept the panel, aides, press, then the camera, speaking to millions fed lies of wealth's truth. Her voice was clear. Money can bury truth, but it always rises. The words weren't for Kane, but for every silenced voice, every disillusioned voter. She wasn't ending a hearing. She was sparking a reckoning. No one moved, not from fear, but awe at her clarity. She'd exposed money's myth as power's shield, with only facts and resolve. Aides packed files, reporters chased quotes, security signaled exits. Elizabeth lingered, eyes on the lens, bearing witness. Then, without fanfare, she left. Not victorious, but transformative. The room would never feel the same. The vote's echo shifted the nation, not just DC, but the space between the resigned. It wasn't celebration or disbelief, but a charged pause, like thunder's aftermath. Reporters rushed, mics raised, producers shouting, "Go live!" Within a minute, alerts hit screens. Congress refers Kane for investigation, 10-3. But the vote wasn't the shock. It was Kane's voice. "We buy their riders." That line seared media, looping on news, airports, TikToks, and Reels. Politics didn't matter. You knew the system was fixed when its fixer admitted it. Social media erupted. Kane tapes trended globally in half an hour. Elizabeth's words, "Money can bury truth, but it rises," became posters, graffiti, banners. A Minnesota professor showed the hearing's end to students. A teen asked, "Did she win?" "No," he replied, shutting his laptop. "She revealed." The room fell silent. News scrambled. Some called it Watergate Reborn. Others warned of economic risks. But the public ignored spin, gripped by raw truth. Campaign offices panicked, aides scrubbing Kane tees. A swing state advisor shouted, "Erase it all!" Staffers tweeted transparency while checking for Kane photos. Then, Senator Robert Ellis of Wyoming resigned. At 5:42 p.m., his tweeted letter read, "I took their money, knowing its cost. This is the line. I'm done. Sorry." It hit 480,000 retweets in minutes. People gathered, not to protest, but to witness, in libraries, courthouses, union lots. They read Elizabeth's words. Students projected the hearing. Ministers quoted her. A Louisiana preacher said, "God lets temples fall when lies patch the cracks." In Detroit, a mural showed Elizabeth facing a puppeteer, captioned, "Not every lobbyist picks the pen." Elizabeth's office stayed lit late, handling 7,000 emails, anger, threats, but mostly gratitude. One read, "You made truth feel real again." She didn't seek the spotlight, replying to constituents herself. Her staff said she ignored global trends. That wasn't her goal. Professors added the hearing to courses. Law students studied its precedent. Civic groups launched Know the Web to educate voters. Elizabeth didn't just expose corruption, she named it, making power tremble. Her clarity in a numb democracy was revolutionary. The backlash hit fast, power's machinery in overdrive. Kane's empire didn't yield. It struck back. Op-eds branded Elizabeth reckless, a decorum threat. Columnists claimed she used identity for spectacle. News spliced her Iowa speech with failing businesses, implying she despised America. Disinformation surged. Bots falsely tied her to corporate funds. Deep fakes showed her laughing at the hearing. A lie. Hashtags like #HarperHypocrite trended, memes painting her as a radical. Local stations ran scripted attacks. Harper's actions concern all sides. Fake stats claimed her hearing crashed markets. In D.C., a memo accused her of bias, demanding ethics probes. Republicans cited grandstanding. Democrats hedged, dodging questions. Her staff got 200 threats, voicemails vowing her ruin. Her Iowa office received a suspicious package, cleared later. Blogs falsely claimed her law license was under review. A headline captured the bias. Harper, hero or headache. Lobbyists pushed a Restoring Civility campaign, offering funds to denounce oversight abuse. Policies aimed to limit future evidence. Elizabeth stood firm, holding one press conference. "If truth makes me a target," she said, "it shows how power guards itself. I answer to people, not hidden donors." She returned to the House, cameras trailing. She didn't flinch, voting and speaking as if unscathed. Her endurance terrified them. She survived the machine. The backlash exposed not her, but them. And power's quiet architects saw she wasn't chasing headlines, but lasting change. At first, silence followed shock, the kind Elizabeth knew, when injustice is dismissed as imagination. But this time, people heard Kane's truth and Elizabeth's defiance. Truth, once clear, sticks. In Atlanta, teens played the hearing on lunch break, one holding a sign, "I want a clear government." Gatherings spread to Denver, Philadelphia, Phoenix. Students plastered Elizabeth's quote on walls. Activists projected it on courthouses. Teachers shared transcripts. A North Carolina Marine said, "Harper spoke more truth in 30 minutes than Congress in decades." Our turn. In Oklahoma, Native women tied Kane's pipelines to tribal losses. Minneapolis clergy read her antidote line in unison. It wasn't just Kane. It was the bought silence, the warped truths. Elizabeth made it visible. In Mississippi, black farmers wrote, "Harper brought our voices back." Donations poured into grassroots groups, even in red states. Nebraska veterans marched, saying, "This isn't politics, it's about billionaire rules." TikTok creators mixed Elizabeth's words with civil rights imagery, one video hitting 12 million views. Her office got 50,000 letters. A West Virginia worker wrote, "Your guts make me trust again." A San Bernardino girl said, "I want to be in Congress now." The Clean Hands Coalition formed, with 200 chapters. Their slogan, "Truth floats. We rise." Elizabeth didn't plan this. Asked if she sparked a movement, she said, "I voiced what we knew." The movement began when people saw they weren't mad for noticing. The machine tried to bury her, but people amplified her. Truth didn't just float, it carried millions. Crowds faded, hashtags waned, cameras left. But something lingered, a lesson Elizabeth didn't intend, but bore. Fire changes you, even in victory. She left the hearing heavier, knowing the risk that truth might fade. But people cared, and now came the hardest part, living between justice and its absence. She learned you can survive the system, yet carry scars. Late nights, she read letters, hopeful but some cruel, one saying, "Your truth changes nothing." She saw it not as fear, but truth. Truth demands action. The lesson wasn't corruption's existence, but the system's fierce retaliation. Speak clearly, and they attack your tone, identity, rationality. Elizabeth didn't shout, yet was called revolutionary. Power fears not exposure, but resilience, the endurance past smears and silence. She'd seen others, activists, whistleblowers, abandoned. She vowed not to falter, and didn't, but it cost sleep, safety, likability. A colleague warned, "You're radioactive." She didn't reply. The risk of silence was louder. Truth doesn't shift people. Courage makes them see. Her words opened hearts. A firefighter voting again. A teacher using her words. A father whose daughter recited her lines. They sought not policy, but belief's return. That was it. Dignity outlasts delayed justice. Elizabeth gave a map through the fog, proving quiet words shake rooms. The lesson landed, not just in history, but in a nation's heart. Truth without action is memory, and she sought movement. She stood before a Capitol Hill crowd, her voice a piercing light. "They wanted this to end," she said sharply. "I want consequences." She faced veterans, nurses, students, the disillusioned. Don't wait for saviors, be undeniable. It was no speech, but a challenge. She demanded pressure. Feel powerless? Reclaim your space. Vote like it's a blade. It is. Organize like democracy's at your table. It is. Speak, especially when you tremble. She pointed to the Capitol. That's yours, not billionaires. They bet you'll forget. The crowd didn't cheer. They focused, sensing a countdown. Her final words pulsed through marble and hearts. We don't need permission to demand accountability, just each other. Begin now. The air charged. Thank you for joining this justice journey. Your support fuels us. Like, subscribe, turn on notifications to stay with us. Share your thoughts below. What stirred you most? Together, our voices shape change.